Hey guys, welcome back. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online platform where you can learn and kick it with some of the most creative minds. I want to talk to you about an outdoor photography course I found by Chris Burkhardt.
My name is Chris Burkhardt. I'm an adventure photographer from Central California. I'm 28 years old, and I'm out here in Joshua Tree National Park to teach my Skillshare class.
This class kicks off with essential equipment you need as a photographer. Then he splits the class into different courses, focusing on sunrise, sunset, and night photography. You'll learn about how to utilize natural light and how to properly compose your landscape shots. He then discusses his editing steps and gives everyone tips and tricks on how to perfect colors of each photo. What I really like about this course is how he articulates his photography process and specifically how he composes images through the inclusion and absence of light. Click the link in the description below and the first 500 of you get 2 months free of creative knowledge, all thanks to Skillshare. Hey guys, so after much anticipated time, I went through a lot of the comments that you guys left on so many of my videos, and it was always this consistent urgency for me to create a video on how I edit my photos, especially my fall/autumn images. And it got me really thinking, like, what's the right way to go about this? I wanted to maybe capture fall images and then show how I would edit them, but I was like, no, you know what? It should be a little bit more strategic. I should show you guys how I would take photos which aren't taken during fall time and be able to convert the colors and edit them and show you the process I would take in order to actually make them look like they were in fall. Now, I'm using a set of images from my trip to the Dolomites, South Tyrol to be specific, in northern Italy. This was an incredible trip. It was about a year and a half ago. I never really got around to using the footage, and maybe I used a little bit of the photos, but that's about it. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to go back in there, revisit some of the content, talk about how I would edit each of the images. I chose a variety of product, landscape, and some portraits so that you guys can see how you can work with all three. Like I said, this is a video for you guys to have fun with me, so I hope you enjoy it. And always remember, like, I want you guys to hit that subscribe button. Like, you guys are viewing my videos, you might as well be subscribed, right? So hit that subscribe button and let's begin this tutorial. Alright guys, so I have the images up on Lightroom. Just quickly talk about them. These shots were all taken in the northern part of Italy, the Dolomites to be specific. I was out there with Mercedes-Benz and South Tyrol Tourism Board. We were in Bolzano. I shot a variety of different photos, some portraits, some landscapes, and of course product shots, so I can show you guys some options in terms of editing. The goal here is to achieve a fall/autumn look for your images that were probably not taken during that time of the season. So these were shot in springtime, as you can tell from the green grass and the blue skies and etc. So the look we want to achieve is essentially this. We want to be able to create some sort of warmth, really bring out some contrast, make sure the products or anything as the subject is really prominent in the image, and give it like a very nice, smooth, silky finish. We're going to reset the image and go straight into the editing. Now in Lightroom on the right hand side, you'll see all the settings. In terms of editing, you got basics, tones, curves, details, etc., and so on and so forth. First thing we want to do is get in the basics, and we want to adjust the temperature. Because these are fall images, we got to make sure that they're warm and they have that autumn vibe to them. In terms of tint, we don't really necessarily need to deal with it at the moment. We can always come back to it later on and adjust that. This is the way I edit, so just follow along as I show you guys what I would do. Of course, you can apply a different set of techniques for your own images. Exposure, I always overexpose my images when I shoot them, and I underexpose when I edit, just because I want to create that moody type of feeling in the image. And then contrast, I want to pump up that contrast so that the product stands out and there's some sort of balance between the image in terms of what I want to focus on and what I don't want to focus on. Highlights, we're going to bring those back down, so we're getting a lot more detail there in the sky and around the vehicle in terms of all the reflections. And in terms of shadows, we're going to pump up the shadows. The goal here is that we want to show as much detail as possible while also making sure there's a level of contrast where your image is still very clear. And then later on, what I do with whites, I bring them down, because I don't like it when there's too much whiteness in the image.
not in terms of brightness, but in terms of how dark or how light it is. As you can tell, I bring down the whites and I also bring up the blacks. So I'm making the blacks lighter and I'm making the whites darker. But just as a note, that might change because when I get to the tone curve, I make adjustments that will impact all those settings as well. In terms of texture, we're going to leave that the same. I don't play around with the dehaze unless there is a lot of opportunity for it, but in these images there isn't much. In terms of clarity, we're going to bring down the clarity. And the reason I do this is because social media, usually when you upload content, it compresses it. Therefore, you're losing a lot of information. And what they end up doing is sometimes they even sharpen your image, or the way it flattens out to be is that your image starts to look like it was over clarified or over sharpened. I like it when my image looks silky smooth. And the way to do that is really bring down that clarity. Once those are done, we're going to leave the vibrancy and the saturation. We're going to jump right into the tone curve. Now, many people don't really understand what the tone curve is, but the tone curve is a very powerful tool and it can really affect the overall brightness and contrast of your image. So there's two things it really does, is the brightness and the contrast. And how do you manipulate those things? Well, the good thing about the tone curve is that if you understand it, it could literally make your content a million times better. And it's easy to understand. At the bottom here, that first dot is all the blacks in your image, and at the top you have all the whites. So if you adjust the whites and bring this down, you can see the whites getting darker, and this is with them getting lighter. And similarly with the bottom note, if you're going this way, your blacks get darker and your blacks get lighter. Now, if you add points to this line, you create your shadows, which is in this area. You create your midtones, which is typically in this area, and your highlights, which are in this area. So if you're adjusting this right here, you're adjusting the highlights of your image. If you're adjusting this, you're adjusting the midtones. Similarly, if you're adjusting this, you're adjusting your shadows. So we're going to go back to the original line and we're going to edit it so that the image can pop and look good as possible. Another thing you want to note when you're looking at the tone curve is that it says RGB, and this is the primary colors for digital images. So it's reds, greens, and blues. But when you were studying in elementary school and high school, you were probably taught that the primary colors were red, green, and yellow, which is true for paint and real life things. But for digital content, typically it's these three colors. And the reason for it is because these three colors are the three colors that we see as receptors. These are the colors our eyes actually take in. Therefore, they're the best to work with in the digital space. Now, what we're going to do here, I want to work with the blacks. Now, the blacks, I want to actually bring them up a little bit so that you can start to see a fade. Here, I'll zoom in so you guys can see better. But do you start to see that fade in the image? That's exactly what I want to achieve. Now with the shadows, I want to bring those shadows a little bit back. So you're starting to see that contrast come through. Midtones, you can adjust them up a little bit. And then your highlights, actually for this image, I want to pull them up so that you're still seeing a lot of that detail in the sky, but it's not blown out as well. Now that I'm good with my tone curve, we can even reset to see what it was originally. And this is where it's at right now. So the image is starting to come through. Next thing you want to do is you want to go to your colors. Now, for the sake of time, obviously I'm not going to spend an hour on this video to talk through all the changes I'm going to make in this image, but I'm going to do this in a very quick pace, not talk, just go through them, try to follow along, and you'll see exactly why I do the things I do. Once you've set the colors for your image, of course, you can always go through and edit each color separately in the saturation levels, and luminance, and the hue of it. But I usually work with this panel right here because it's just a lot easier to see and visualize. So far, this is what I have. If we reset the image and go back, it's starting to look a lot like what I initially wanted to show you guys, which is very nice, warm colors. You're seeing the car pop more than it was typically before because of that contrast between the sky and the grass. Now it's a subtle contrast, it's warm, it's welcoming to the eyes. Next thing you want to do is go to split toning. Now this is also where a lot of the magic happens. Now in order to actually manipulate split toning, the best way to do it is give a little saturation, and then you start to play around with the highlights. And I think something like this typically sits well. And then in terms of the shadows, you kind of move around until you feel you're comfortable with the image. I think for this particular shot, I'm leaning more towards this end of the spectrum. And then for detail, this is very straightforward. I think the best way to deal with detail is just to give your image enough sharpness. The detail and the radius I would leave the same. Noise, this image doesn't really have too much noise, but you can see what noise adjustment actually does to it. It kind of melts it. We don't need to adjust that too much. Lens correction, we're not going to worry about that at the moment because it's not going to make a difference for this photo. But if you want to, you can always enable profile corrections, and you can choose the lens, the model, camera, and so on and so forth. I actually like somewhat the vignette or the distortion that happens around the image. In terms of transformation, again, there's not much that we're going to do. I think the image is pretty level, as you can see. So there's not much here that's going to make a difference. We're going to turn that off. In terms of effects, here I like to add a level of grain to the image. And the best way to do it is actually zoom into your image as much as you can, so you can see whether or not you're happy with the size, the roughness, the amount. I don't like it when it's rough. I prefer it when it still looks kind of smooth and there's not too much grain. Calibration, we don't have to worry about that. So this is the pre-final image. I want to go back to the top and adjust the basics again. So here we're going to go back and quickly adjust the contrast, give it a little bit more exposure if it's needed. I just fine-tune everything after I've decided I'm content with the image. So as of right now, if we pull this image up, I think this is exactly where I want the image to be in terms of colors, in terms of contrast, in terms of overall kind of look. This speaks volumes to me. It says it's fall, it was shot during an autumn season, leaves are changing color, the grass is dead or maybe in the process of dying, so on and so forth. Once you've established your preset, the best thing to do is usually save that preset. So we're going to create a preset here. We're going to obviously select everything for the time being. We'll title this preset Fall Sample 2019. Maybe we'll fix it 1 because we'll have multiple ones. And then you can go to your second image. And apply it. Now, as you can see, the temperature here is not going to work for this image, so we're going to have to adjust it. But the moment you adjust it, you start to see that it works really nicely. I love that, you know, it brings back the blues. It's really creating that warmth in the image. The grass is looking great. It draws a lot of emphasis to the road. It creates a very nice, comforting image to look at. The before versus the after. Very different. You can even do a comparison like this. Very different. And then the best thing to do, of course, is to keep applying the preset, and you move through all your images and you make the adjustments as you need, as you see necessary. So before, after. Well, you can also just, you know, hold down on all of them and synchronize. You can go through. Now for this particular shot, I'm actually going to bring back the exposure. I'm going to give it more warmth and pull up the contrast. And then I'm going to go use the brush tool. Make sure that nothing is selected here, and you're going to quickly sharpen certain elements and give more clarity to them. And then you can even go into here. And then I would even go further as to crop and even create a vignette. I like that much more. See, that's a beautiful shot. You can frame it, put it up in your kitchen or your living room. And similarly, this shot is great because the moon right here, but it needs more warmth and it needs an adjustment in terms of the orange hue. not too much. You don't want it to look fake as well, so that's very important to emphasize. Something like this looks great to me. Now, skin tones. This is very, very important to focus on. Skin tones are somewhat difficult to manage because everyone has different skin tones, but you have to go through. The best way to do it is actually zoom into your image. I feel bad for zooming into my friend's face that much, but you zoom into your image and you manipulate the skin tone until you see a consistency in it. And the best way to do it is actually zoom in as much as you can. Otherwise, you'll miss it. And it happens around a lot of the shadow areas where there's creases in the face and whatnot. Right now, I like the way it's starting to look. And you want it to look silky. And the way to do that is actually keep bringing down that clarity and bring down some of that texture. You start to see the smoothness. See what texture does? I'll show you. With texture, reduce texture. It melts the skin. It creates a very nice silky look to the image. I copy that and apply it to this image. And then raise the exposure. Go further and crop in. Zoom in just to make sure the skin tones are even, which looks even. And that's it. There you have it. These are your presets. Now, because all of them are very different, for these two I actually adjusted the temperature, so we're going to save those as new presets. Fall sample 2019 2, and then this one, because it's a skin tone one, we're going to save it as fall sample 2019 3. Perfect. Now we have our 3 presets. Because you guys are dope, I'm gonna provide you guys with these 3 presets. All you have to do is go to my website, click store, and it's going to be right here for you guys, available on my website. And also be sure to check out my other preset packs. I have seasonal, winter, summer, and a fall pack here. Now the filter we actually just created is in my fall pack, but it's not the same one. It's kind of a unique one that we've just created together. So yeah, those 3 presets will be on my website for you guys to download for free. Be sure to tag me in the images that you use. I'd love to see the type of content you guys come out with. And whoever tags me is going to enter into another contest to win all the presets, including my LUTs. So there's a lot of prizes that I want to give away. Just be sure to kind of follow along and tag me in all the content that you guys produce. I'm just going to export all these images so we can see them in a slideshow. There they are. Sweet.
So there you have it, guys. That's essentially the process I take in order to edit some of my images. Now, this is a simplified version, of course, because most of the time I go through and I just apply a filter. But I want to break down the process for you guys as much as possible so you can follow step by step how I would approach editing an image, specifically manipulating the colors to look more fall-like. That being said, this is my approach and you might have your own, but along the process I hope I was able to teach you some techniques. But I want to make this a recurring series, so I'm going to continue editing images and show you guys a variety of ways to edit them, whether or not it's fall, spring, autumn, or winter, so you can really follow along the process I take with all the various different seasons and depending on the type of landscapes or urbanscapes that you visit. If you guys want to see more of these type of videos, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and also like this video. And as always, I'll see you guys next week. Peace!